Hey, and welcome back to the podcast. LaSean Smith is here, and you can find him in two locations. There's his website, LaSean.com, and he is the founder of the investment firm CAGR Investments, and they are at CAGR.com. And LaSean helps people predictably navigate their entrepreneurial journey, and he likes to uncover patterns to use process as a tool to win in business more often. So we will uncover all about those sorts of things, how to achieve more success, more predictable, consistent success, and so much more. So LaSean, glad to be speaking with you.
Great to hang out, Robert. How are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. I just read your blog post a few minutes ago about the 30-second chat GPT prompt training, the STAR, the situation, task, action, result. And I love this sort of thinking, just the kind of looking at all these things you've done and distilling it down into these really condensed blog posts. And it was fun just kind of jumping in, getting these little nuggets. So that is how I am doing today. I am in learning knowledge mode. So dump some knowledge on me.
Oh, that's great. Well, that example you gave, I think, is a good anecdote to how powerful some of these AI tools can be today. Many times folks look at it as a all or nothing. I'm either going to outsource a task fully to some AI agent, or listen, my customers will never accept that. I will not win if I embrace AI. Everything has to be manual. And we know that's kind of a silly way to kind of bifurcate the option. And so in that example, what I like is there are frameworks that are proven. And when I say frameworks, business frameworks, whether it's related to, back of office, but, especially on the sales and marketing side, that are very effective in how you think about your sales process. And you don't have to reinvent those. And I like to say some of these AI tools are, at best a recent college hire. I mean, they may know the basics on how to communicate, but they don't know how to work. And if you use these proven frameworks as a baseline to start training them, you can get some really good output out of them with very low effort. Now, they're still not perfect, but if we look at what's been compounding over the last kind of quarter over quarter, just in the kind of anniversary year here of ChatGPT, I think in another 18 months or so, we're going to be able to leverage some of these existing frameworks to really do some powerful things. And I know on your show you've covered things like VAs and what have you. Regardless if you have in-house talent, you're leveraging VAs, maybe you're a solopreneur with a couple of contractors, or you're a venture-backed startup and you're going through explosive growth. I don't think anyone should be ignoring how they kind of pull this into their business. And to your opening question, it's all about the process. And so if you don't start by documenting what the process is, you kind of, leave yourself open to not really having a great place to kind of insert some of these tools as they surface.
That's very helpful and very inspiring right off the bat. And you and me are a couple of programming type of guys. And what comes to mind is we've all, us programmers have all been there, where we've spent hours on end coding, programming something, and you think, cool, it's self-documenting. I don't need to write down what I did. And then 6 months later, you go back and you say, what the heck is that? I don't even know where to begin. I don't even know where the problem is. So there's definitely something as far as the documentation of what you're doing and following that process. That way you don't have to kind of expend that mental energy to start from scratch every time. And then that way the tool can be something that helps you move along more quickly. And also with the kind of caveat that you said there of the tool that you use, whether it's ChatGPT or some kind of framework, it's a recent college hire. So it's something that you can work alongside and it can enhance what you do. But if you look for it to just like be an exact clone of you, then you'll be disappointed. So we kind of navigate all those things to avoid the reinventing the wheel from scratch, to avoid the trying to remember what I did 6 months ago, and also just to avoid the frustration of saying, like, why isn't it just magic already? Why isn't it just doing it for me? And so this is all like wonderful to think about. And so as far as you and your business and the way that you make money and the problems that you solve, what is that all about? Why are we listening? Who are we helping today?
Yeah, so my focus, I acquire and incubate small businesses across the world. And the two unique things about my business is one, I invest permanent capital, which means I'm not looking to sell the business. I'm starting businesses for cash flow, and that sounds crazy that we even have to say that out loud nowadays. But I own business that make cash. Not to sell to a strategic or any of the kind of financial shenanigans that have happened over the last kind of 10 years as we're coming out of a pretty long zero interest rate policy period. And the other piece is I don't use what they call OPM, other people's money. So I am investing my own cash. And the type of businesses I focus on is helping other businesses. So I help other people start, grow, and sell their business. And since I focus on small businesses as my customer, plenty of people have different definitions of small businesses. I think the U.S. government calls, the SBA calls it any company below 1,500 employees. I'm way smaller than that. Typically, the businesses that I'm focused on are $5 million or less in top line revenue. And the goal for me is to take some of the tools that are typically reserved for large players, larger companies, more resource rich companies, and kind of bring those down market. So an example is, let's say a company, let's say a small business is ready to sell their company. Many times what you will have is a set of documents. There's an investment teaser. There's an information memorandum, sometimes called a CIM, a confidential information memorandum, throwing out some acronyms here. And then all that gets parked with financial documents and other things in a data room. And that's just a fancy way of saying there's a Dropbox or a Google Drive someplace that has secure access to all the information that the buyer of the business may need. Well, when you are, a small business owner, regardless of industry, that whole process may be foreign to you. The same way it might be foreign to somebody who's buying or selling a house for the first time. And so it's not uncommon that you go have an expert. And there are people who do just that. There are investment bankers, there are business brokers, there are all sorts of folks who will help you with this part of your kind of business journey. And what I found was time and time again, some of the smaller businesses did not have the resources or the deals weren't big enough for an investment bank to say, we'll help sell your business. And so that's just one example on the kind of the sunsetting portion. But then all the way back to the beginning, kind of thinking about, your visual identity, your ability to kind of pick the right market in the first place. That's something I really, really advocate folks to focus on. I'm acquiring small businesses to go help other small businesses along that complete journey.
Amazing. I feel like every kind of back and forth question we have is like a mini podcast in and of itself, right? There's so information packed in. And so I'm just trying to digest it all. And basically what I'm getting from you is like, you sort of have these like life and business principles, right? You say like, here's what I do in business. And more importantly, here's what I don't do. So that way, like what kind of opportunities to say yes and no to. And then you say, so here's what you do as far as the buying and the growing of the businesses. And then you say kind of the second kind of stream there is then you say, well, you teach people how to get to that point, right? How to sell their business. And then you say, in order to do that, here's kind of the goal. And then here are kind of the concepts, the things to know, right? Those acronyms, those documents in kind of like this chronological order. And then also based on that, then here are the people that you need to talk to and help to make that happen. And then in there's also, you're mentioning about how there's like this type of people that are left behind and not helped about. And so to kind of get a good idea about these kind of businesses that you buy and grow, is there one that is kind of lends itself to a fun story right now? Like as far as these businesses that you come across, is there one that you want to tell a story about that you've maybe bought and grown that is kind of fun just to speak to?
Yeah, sure. So, as I said, one of the biggest missteps I see with folks who are starting their company is not so much that they're they don't know how to build their product or deliver their service. Now, it may not be a great product or service. That's another issue. But typically, folks have the domain and discipline expertise to go do that. What's typically broken is their go-to-market and sales motion is suboptimal, or they've just picked the wrong market. And what I mean by market is, their target customer. I have a very specific definition that I use to describe a market. That is a group of individuals who share a problem that is painful, urgent, and reoccurring. And if it's a great market, they'll have all of those attributes, and they will have the willingness to pay to solve said problem. And many times folks are scratching their own itch. They're not doing all the work that it takes to go and kind of pull this all together. And so one of the companies I bought was a traditional vanilla kind of branding agency called 5Deer. And that company, great logos, kind of, brand guidelines, all the things you would kind of typically need. And what we kind of kept stumbling into was, once we got to the brand guideline, we had these nice templates to help things move forward more quickly. And not the templates for the visual part, but the actual text to say, like, let's talk about your positioning. Let's talk about your brand tone. Let's talk about your values. And we thought it would be a really simple kind of form that we would send out to the customers. And the person leading this business, they had always just kind of like phoned it in and just kind of filled those things out. And when you looked at some of the past brand guidelines that they had built, it wasn't really that meaningful. And I said, hey, can we do a better job here? And what we learned is the owners of the businesses actually couldn't answer those questions, right? And so, not surprisingly, when they got to the point where they had to do a paid ad campaign, they had to do email drips, they had to go figure out a sales script, they had to go show up at a conference, they had to go, speak to, press for PR. Any of these things, they were all sorts of random reacting to these things without kind of this consolidated base. And so what we solved, or how we solved that, was to really kind of extend and say, all right, there's a readiness profile that we believe most companies should have. And you shouldn't have to spend $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 to go solve that. How can you scope that down and give folks a blueprint that says, listen, if you want to DIY it, here's a handful of great books, resources, and some templates that we've developed, and you can go off and do this yourself. If you want it done with you, then here's a package that we offer. And if you want it done for you, we actually recommend some folks to do that. And the reason we don't do a totally done for you there is, this is your business. Like, you really need to understand what this thing stands for. And so that's an example of how we took a very basic commoditized service, added this new offering to it, and it did two things. Number one, the business has grown quite a lot because we just expanded that offer. And so what used to be $5,000 to $10,000 projects, those have expanded to $15,000 to $30,000 kind of ticket projects. And so the same sales cycle is there, but higher ticket. But the second piece is, now that customer has such a much stronger base to start from. As I look at the other companies along the small business journey, they're now ready to now be customers of some of those other businesses. And so I kind of stay away from the word synergy, but there's definitely this complementary output that's happened because of kind of making sure the customer was truly ready to succeed.
Amazing. And you've given us so much to think about. And I'm trying to remember. So you said we need to be targeting these people who have a painful and urgent and a reoccurring problem. And you're mentioning just all of these kind of maybe like missing fundamentals, right? Like, again, going back to the programmer thing, it's really tempting and easy to fall in love with your own product and add all kinds of fun, amazing features, and then miss out on the marketing part of it, of the getting the message out there and actually solving these customer pain points and all these things that from the outside looking in are like kind of no-brainers. But then if you're so caught up in the day-to-day and you're not really that well prepared, or maybe you're not really like documenting your processes very well, or maybe they're documented, but there's like the disconnect between what's written down and what you're actually doing. And so there's so many ways to go wrong. And so as far as just these people that you're helping, right? I'm sure like there's all kinds of mistakes being made left and right, but is there like one single mistake that you see that's out there that you think maybe we need to focus on?
Yeah, there are two fighting for first place as kind of very common pieces. I think the first is, especially if businesses are early stage, and unless you're low seven figures of top line, I'm going to call you early stage. So that's mini businesses. they don't build async process. And what I mean by that, is using the word asynchronous. This will make sense to you as a developer, but for folks not familiar with that word, it's working in parallel. So a process can start and run without you being directly involved. And so an example of async is a customer sends an email and then you reply to that email when appropriate. A example of synchronous is going to be you have to schedule a meeting at a specific time to go talk to that customer. And for certain industries and certain business or customer profiles, you can't turn everything async. But I see folks having all of this synchronous process in their sales portion, in their delivery stage, in their support. And they're like wondering why they're burnt out. They have like no time available. Each of those are almost like its own job. And so the more you can introduce async process where the business runs decoupled from your scheduled calendar time, super, super critical. The second piece that I see folks constantly kind of break down, and I alluded to this, is they want to use an excuse that, hey, I'm not good at sales. And I look at sales as, helping someone else make a high confidence decision. And through that lens, it doesn't matter if you're trying to hire an employee, convince someone to be your co-founder, raise money for an investor, have a vendor come on board, or land a customer. All of this is selling. You're trying to help them reach a high confidence decision. And when you look and connect the things that we were talking about previously, figuring out your story, understanding how to kind of put this all together so you have a clearly articulated why, then it's a lot easier to show up and say, all right, this isn't about you giving me cash. This is about this outcome, this transformation that you're seeking. And it's so much easier to write the copy, to have the conversation or what have you. And, it's like not working out. It's painful when you first start this process because it's such a foreign muscle to exercise for so many people. But that ability to really embrace sales through that lens, I find when people can unlock that, the other tactical things of being systems oriented and what have you, those are relatively easy to execute, but that sales motion is really a mindset shift that folks have to embrace.
I find those to be two very powerful ideas. Number one, do get more of your business to be asynchronous. That way, you're not the bottleneck. That way, you don't have what do they call them? Race conditions, right? Where like all these things are piling up and they're waiting for you to move things along. So get things to be more asynchronous. And then you're also saying to kind of get over the kind of the tactical sales process and instead make sales about helping. And you're making me think back to like kind of all the overlap and all the commonalities that come when doing like a businessy podcast like this. And like what are the ahas that keep coming up again and again? And people talk about things like your mission and your vision and your values and how it's important to like have your team all kind of on board with that same code, so to speak. And that way, any one of them could just be in a conversation and get on a podcast and talk about all the amazing things they do. I mean, you imagine if someone who worked at like Disney or Apple, if they're sitting at Christmas dinner with their family and someone's asking them like, well, tell me about what Disney's working on. Do you think they would say like, oh, I don't even know what Disney does. I can't talk about that. No, of course, right. They would be immersed in the culture, but some of those sort of ideas like the culture and the branding, it's really easy to get lost in all the slop, right? In all the nonsense buzzwords. But as far as you're saying these goals, it makes a lot of sense of saying like, well, get everyone on board with kind of the ideas and the magic and the solution and the pain and the people you're helping. That way, sales is just about helping and anyone can talk about it. And it's kind of more instinctual and more natural. And so there's just so many ideas that we're getting into. And I want to make sure as we're kind of nearing the end of our conversation here that we talk about kind of you and your struggles and your problems, because those are the juiciest tidbits, right? When we talk about how you kind of had like a panic moment or just a frustration moment. So what comes to mind when I just ask you about a problem from maybe the last few years that you've had to overcome?
Yeah, well, being an investor, part of that journey is embracing your failures and having a broad enough kind of capital stack so you can keep showing up, to play the game the next day. On the, opening side of that, one of the struggles I had was even making the leap. I was working at a big tech company at the time, and I had about $250,000 in what's called restricted stock units, RSUs. And it sounds like, to me now, it's like a silly number. I was like so stressed, like I'm going to give up, this 250 grand. And, I don't know what it was, about 4 or 5 months into that particular business that I left the company to go start. I reached out to my CPA and I was like, is this number in our bank account correct? And there was 700 some odd grand in the bank account. And it was so funny that I was like paralyzed by indecision. And in hindsight, that number was like so trivial. It's not always going to work out. Sometimes, we have different levels of responsibilities that we have to kind of consider. But I was introducing these self-limiting beliefs and, kind of overvaluing, this thing that was in my hand at the kind of expense of the upside. And so just having the clarity to make, those decisions with conviction is important. But on the more direct failure side, I invested in a salad business a few years ago. And, this is like retail, food and beverage. Like these are really hard businesses to run. And one of my proudest moments is the screenshot I took on Yelp, where the company was listed. It was called Fine Salads. And at the bottom, it says permanently closed. And the reason I take so much pride in that is because I had a lot of kind of hubris on how I was just going to go knock this out and be more sophisticated. Great branding, great tech stack, good loyalty program, good menu design. And really what it came down to was the operational excellence to get up and run that every day. I hadn't hired, an experienced enough team. I hadn't give them the tools to succeed. And so in spite of all the great planning and pieces up front, I hadn't done what it would take to sustain that. And so I look at that investment more as tuition paid than business failed.
Okay, and you just move on to the next thing. And so from when a lot of what kind of the insights I've been getting from you is just about the fundamentals, right? It's so easy to look back at past failures and say, oh, it was bad timing or bad luck or this little technicality. But it seems like from the failure that you mentioned and from like the earlier story about the businesses you helped, it's so easy to just have the blind spots and to just be missing these really simple things. And that's why we need to always be learning and even like relearning and getting the repeat advice and staying curious and all those other things. So that way we just don't get caught in our own thinking or our own limitations, which includes the self-limiting beliefs that you're talking about. And so, you're here on a podcast, and it's kind of like dating where you demonstrate value. And then once someone is listening to the podcast, then they say, okay, well, I got value about that. And now my curiosity is piqued. And now I want to go and find out what LaSean is talking about moving into the future, and also as far as his company and some of these things we mentioned, like the training and everything else. So how can someone find out more about those things? And how does someone know if their company is the right fit to continue working with you? What's the call to action here?
Yeah, it's two sides of that. If there's a business that's already running that is in the business services space and you generate at least $500,000 in profit / EBITDA per year, please reach out. If you are on the other side and you're growing or developing your business and you're really trying to figure out how do you accelerate your path to maybe you haven't even started, but definitely growth and preparing your business for sale. You can reach out to our group email. It's grow@cagr.com. And CAGR is a financial term called, or stands for compound annual growth rate. And the whole premise here is not just to compound our dollars, but to also compound our personal development, how we help each other. And so even if you are very early stage and you're not quite at the point where we have a product for you, I'm always happy to make time for a free 15-20 minute call so folks can reach out and book some time.
Fantastic. So grow@CAGR.com. That's CAGR. And then that personal blog we mentioned earlier is LaSean.com. And as we're wrapping up our conversation here, LaSean, I always find it fun to just plug in a simple quote or lesson that has either helped you or you think can help our listeners. So what comes to mind as far as a quote or lesson from you?
Well, I won't get the words right for this quote, but it's from Warren Buffett. And he effectively says, pick the right lane. You can do all the right things in business, as I've said here today. A lot of it is just about executing the fundamentals, and that'll go a long way, much further many times than being extra sophisticated. But you can do all those things right. But if you pick the wrong lane, the wrong industry, the wrong discipline, the wrong skill stack, the wrong geographic region, you can still underperform your potential. And so I really love that quote because it reminds us to start in the right place. And that is a lot of times going to dictate how successful we can become.
Wonderful. I love that advice. Pick the right lane. And as we're picking the right lane and adjusting and contemplating and working on our journey, it is time now to go to LaSean.com and to CAGR.com. And also one more time to mention that email address. That's grow@CAGR.com. It's been wonderful speaking with you, Sean. I feel like I got like 20 new ideas in my head, but most of the ideas are just to simplify things and go back to what works and not be so overly sophisticated and just, don't make it so hard on ourselves. So it's been wonderful speaking with you.
Likewise.